Today's daf, Be'ezus Hashem, is Masechet Avodah Zarah, Samach Hey, number 65. And we will begin from the bottom of daf Samach Dalet Amud Beis with the words that begin Rav Yehuda. We are discussing over here the concept of certain goyim that committed, even if they didn't commit, that they are not serving Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara discussed previously whether they could mavatal on Avodah Zarah or not, since they're not involved anymore with Avodah Zarah. But then we also know from the beginning of the Masechta that you're not allowed to do business with a guy prior to his holiday, because he's going to thank his Avodah Zarah if he's successful in the business transaction. And certainly you can't send him a present on his holiday because he's going to thank his Avodah Zarah. So we begin on the bottom of Daf Samach Dalet Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, Shada le Karbona. Rabbi Yehuda sent a gift, La Avidarna B'Yom Edom. He sent the name of the guy is called Avidarna, and he sent it to him on his holiday. Omar, Rabbi said, Rabbi Yehuda said, Yadana, I know for a fact, Yadana be Deloy Palach Avodah Zarah. I know for a fact that he doesn't serve Avodah Zarah, and therefore he's not going to give gratitude to his idol because I sent him a gift. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda was okay sending him a gift. And the reason why then you ask, why does Avodah have a holiday? It's like a New Year's Day. So it's not a holiday that's dedicated for worshiping Avodah Zarah. And it's a day off. So Rabbi Yehuda sent him a gift. Amalei Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi Yosef said, how can you be so certain that he's a person that is not connected to Avodah Zarah? And then only then, and then you're permitted to send him a gift. Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Ezahu Ger Toshav. What is considered a Ger Toshav? A Ger Toshav is a certain type of goy that is much more religious than an average guy, and he's committed. Kol shekibel ola bifnei gimel. Here's the key word. He accepted upon himself in front of three people, chaverim, shaloi labed avodah zarah. That he's not going to serve avodah zarah. And this Avudarna was not such a person that publicly he committed that he was not going to serve Avodah Zarah. It was something that Rabbi Yehuda knew. So only a Ger Toshav, you're allowed to send a gift, maybe, but not this Avudarna, because he didn't publicly renounce that he's not serving Avodah Zarah. And says the Gemara, Ki Tanyehi Lahach a Ger Toshav is somebody who's accepted upon himself not to do Avodah Zarah. So once you know that, then you have a mitzvah to give him tzedakah. So that's that. However, if you know for a fact that a goy is not serving Avodah Zarah, even though he did not accept it in front of three people, we can assume that he's not serving Avodah Zarah, and therefore you could send him a gift. And that's why a Ger Toshav is another level higher, where if he was makabel on himself in front of three people, not to do Avodah Zarah, not only are you allowed to send him a gift, but you also have a mitzvah to give him tzedakah. Says the Gemara, this Avudarna is still considered to be like a regular guy. Why? Because Ger Toshav is a guy that began the process, let's say, of accepting the mitzvahs, and 12 months pass, and he doesn't begin the process of becoming a Jew. He didn't give himself a bris milah. He's like a regular goy. He's like a regular koifer of the goyim. He's a regular goy, and therefore a ger toshav can revert back to even being lower than a ger toshav, and like a regular goy that serves avodah zarah. So this avudarna certainly, Rav Yehuda knew him for a long time, and even though he was not serving avodah zarah, he didn't have a bris milah, so therefore he didn't become a Jew. So again, how was Rabbi Yehuda allowed to send him a gift? And says the Gemara, he's a good chasam over there. When you say a ger toshav reverts back to being like a regular guy, is kegoin shekibel olav lamol v'loimal. If he at first committed that he's going to become a Jew and he's going to have a bris milah, and in the end he doesn't do the milah. So then he goes down further than he was. First he's a ger toshav. Now he committed himself to become a Jew, and then reneges on that promise to become a Jew. He goes down to becoming worse than a regular guy. He's like a regular guy. So that was that case over there of Rabbi Yochanan. Avodah was just a regular guy that, he made not light of the whole Avodah Zarah business, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda was permitted to send him a gift on his holiday, just for, keeping the peace. Says the Gemara, Rava, the Gemara is discussing how Amoraim used to send gifts to the Goyim on their holiday. Says the Gemara, Rava amti le kurbana levar sheshich b'yom Edom. Rava sent a gift to this person called Bar Sheshach on his holiday. Omar, he said, Yadana beit le palach l'avodah zarah. I know for a fact that he doesn't serve the avodah zarah. This was common practice that they were hypocrites. In public, they would tell everybody to serve avodah zarah, but they themselves, the Bar Sheshach and all that high political people would not serve avodah zarah themselves, but they were involved in other sorts of immorality. So Azal, the Gemara says, Azal, Rava went to his house. Ashkred Yosef Atzaveri Bevarda. He saw Rava saw that this Bar Shishach was up to his neck in a bath of rose water. The Kaiman Zainis Arumas Kameh, and unclothed Zainis were all around him. So Amalei, so Bar Sheshach said to Rava, I'll say, when you guys get to the next world, are you going to have such a Gan Eden? Amalei, so Rava said, we have a better Gan Eden. Amalei, so Bar Sheshach said, what could you have better than me? The better thing that a person could have is a settled mind. He's not nervous about anything. So you're always afraid of what the king is going to do. So we have no fear of any king. We have a very calm mind, and that's the Gan Eden we can have. So Bashisha says, I'm a high official. What kind of fear of the king do I have? I have no fear of the king. While they were sitting there, all of a sudden a messenger of the king came. Amalei, and the messenger said, Kum, get up, Bar Shishach, the king needs you. So Bar Shishach had to interrupt what he was doing, and he had to get dressed, and then Kinafak, as he's leaving the Azal, Amalei, he said like this, Aina the boil the eye that wants to see who for you bishusa something bad to happen, tipoka should be pop out. In other words, if a guy wants bad things to happen to a Jew, his eyes should pop out. And basically, he was saying, look, it's amazing how Rava said such a thing, and just by that point, Hashem made it that somebody from the king wanted Bar Shishach to come right away. Amalei, Rava said, Amen, whatever you say should be true. And really, in Bar Shishach's heart, he wanted bad things to happen to the Jewish people. Then his eye popped out, and he couldn't see anymore. So basically, Rava was saying that the Gan Eden that we have is something called Yishuv Adas, which we're not afraid, or we don't have anxiety of anything. Amar Papi said, Rava could have said this pasuk that shows Benois Malacham Bikreisecha Nitzvah Shegal Liminecha Mekesem Oifer, that in the future world we're going to have princesses help us, and that we're going to be sitting right next to the king with a special gold crown. Basically, we're going to have women working with us who are princely, who are respectable, doing respectable work. That's what Rapapi said. He should have told that to this Bar Shishach, assuming that Bar Shishach knows the Bible and will know Tehillim. Rava could have said the following pasuk, that our future reward is only God knows what our future reward. It's like in another dimension that we can't understand. As the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Ayin l'rasa, no eye saw it, Elikim, besides God, Elikim zulasacha, besides God, no eye saw what Yaseh l'mchakalai, what Hashem is going to do to those that follow after Him and hope for Him and are committed to being good people. So that was that story, a fascinating story, how Rava just jumped into a to Bar Shishach and saw him in a compromising position. Says the Gemara, "Schore lasis imam locha charis." We learned in the Mishnah that if you a goy, if you are carrying, if the goy hires you to carry his wine barrels, then you're not allowed to accept the wages. When he pays you, you have to throw the wages in the garbage. But let's say he hired you to carry, let's say the contract was you're going to carry barrels of oil, and then he asked you, by the way, could you carry this barrel of wine? So then you're allowed to take reward. Says the Gemara, even though he didn't ask you to do the work of carrying the barrel of wine after hours. Itoise erev means after hours. It means he hired you to carry barrels. Let's say he's paying you $1,000 today to carry barrels of oil, and he tells you it's oil, and one of those barrels happens to be wine. You're allowed to take your wages because the contract says he's going to carry barrels of oil. So if you carry the barrels of wine, a barrel of wine, that's okay. But even if you don't do it after hours as a favor, even if you do it as part of the job, ureminu, I'll ask you a stira. Someone hires a worker after hours. The goy tells him, do me a favor, just carry one more barrel of yain nesef from one place to plus one place. Schare mutter, then it's his wages are permitted. Tama, the whole reason why it's permitted, the wages, the amalei toisi arif, because the goy told him after hours, just carry this yain nesef. So it's not part of the job. But kuli yama, but if he during the day, if the guy asks him to carry the barrel of wine, so then it's usher to take that wage, because part of the job was carrying oil and wine. Omar Abaya, Abaya explained, Ki tanan nami masnisim damali taisa erev tanan. Our mission exactly, our mission is talking about where the guy hired the Jew to carry barrels of oil. The whole day the Jew is carrying barrels of oil, and li'itoise erev, after hours, the guy asked the Jew, "Hey, can you carry a barrel of wine?" So then it is permitted. Rava says, like Kasha, it's not a difficult thing. Ha da amale havali mea chavis b'mea prutos. Ha da amale havali chavis bepruta. V'hatanya, as we learned. In other words, there's a difference in the form of the contract. If he said carry 100 barrels and I'm paying you 100 prutas, or if he said for every barrel that you're going to carry, you're going to get one pruta. And the Gemara explains. Hasoicha es apoil, the Bryce explains, if someone hires, the goy hires the worker, the Jewish worker, V'amalein, he told him, Havili meya chavius b'meya prutas, I want you to carry 100 barrels for 100 prutas. So the Jew is carrying barrels. Most of the barrels are oil. V'nimtzas chavius sheyayim nasa b'neihem, and but one of the barrels happens to be one barrel of wine of yain nasa schari aser, then the whole wage is aser, because you're not getting paid until 100 barrels are transferred. So what makes the payment happen? By you transferring yayin esech. So you're working for yayin esech. In that case, the wages are asa. But if you said chavius bepruta, every barrel you're getting 1 penny, 1 pruta. So v'nimtzis chavius yayin esech b'neim. And it turns out that you carried 1 barrel of yayin esech, schari mutar. The schar is mutar, the wage is mutar. Except if he paid you 100 prutas and you carried 100 barrels, you should throw away 1 penny because you carried wine. But the rest are mutter because they're unrelated, because for every barrel that you're carrying, and you're carrying barrels of oil, your reward is mutter, is permitted because it's not related to the carrying of the barrel of wine, because he said for every barrel you're getting a pruta. Then the Mishnah says, if the guy says to the Yid, rent me your donkey because I want to use it to transport yain esach. So you're renting your donkey for the transport of yain esach. Schare aser, the rental fee is aser. Hasu lamali haini reisha. Isn't that the same thing of the reisha? The reisha teaches you not only to take a job personally to be hired by a guy to transport yain esach, and same thing over here. By the way, I just want to review the reason why you're not allowed to take a job by a guy to transport yayin esach, carry his yayin esach, because the Torah tells you in this week's parsha, Abei Ta'abdun, we have a chiyuv to destroy Avodah Zarah. So obviously we're not supposed to want Avodah Zarah to be around so that we can earn a wage. So therefore, your wages are also same thing. The whole point of the yayin esach being around so is that you could rent it to the guy. So the Gemara says, why does the Mishnah have to tell you that case? Seifa itzrich alei. The chiddush of the brisa is the end of the brisa. Schari leishav aleha. He rented the donkey to sit on it. Even if the goy put his jug of his wineskin of yayin esach, but the whole point of the renting of the donkey was the guy is using it to travel. So as part of the cup holder, he puts his yayin esach in the cup holder. Schare mutter, then the rental fee for the donkey is permitted. Says the Gemara, are you trying to tell me that the reason is because the guy had no right to put yayin esach into the cup holder? I'll bring you a contradiction. Someone hires a donkey, so there are general rules. Who can put things in the trunk? The passenger can put his clothing, his jugs, wineskins, and his food for the entire way. Let's say it's a week's travel, so you can put a week's worth of food onto the donkey. But if you're going to put too much, you're going to overload the donkey. The driver can stop you from doing that. And chamor, but the driver, maniach alav sa'irim, could put only little barley, food for the animal, betaven and straw, umazaynaisav, and his food, the driver's food, only for that day. And from there on, the renter could say, hey, you're putting too much food on the donkey, we're going to go slowly. So we see that a driver of a donkey has a right to put his yayin esach into the cup holder. So if that's the case, then why, if you rent a donkey to a goy, even though he's using it to travel, the rental fee is usher, but the guy is going to put his wine into the cup holder. Answers the Gemara, Amar Abai explained, the truth is that he could put his wine into the cup holder. If he doesn't put his wine into the cup holder, are we going to say, oh, you can deduct from the rental fee? No, it's an option. So therefore, that's not the point of the rental. The rental fee is for the use of the donkey for transport, so and for travel. So therefore, if in the event that the guy happened to use the cup holder to put his yayin esach, nevertheless, the rental fee is still mutter for the yid. Now the Gemara just wants to clarify the brisa before going on to another story. You said to me that the passenger can bring food for the entire duration of the trip, and the donkey driver could only put food on the donkey for one day. Says the Gemara, Hechidami, what's the story? If there is, you could always purchase food, so then why should the passenger allow to be put on the donkey food for the entire trip? The donkey driver should be able to stop him and say, only put for one day. And if there is no places to buy food along the road, then the passenger should not stop the wagon driver from putting food for the entire trip, because he's not going to have food for the entire trip if he only brings for one day. From every place that they go for one day, if you work hard, you can buy, in the gas stations or something like that, into little stores that are off the beaten path. So there's ways to buy. So chamor, the donkey driver, since he's constantly on the road, he knows where to buy and what to buy. And he knows that he won't get ripped off. Seicha, but the passenger, since he's not familiar, lav darke lemitrech lemizban, it's not his way of buying from these stores, these off the beaten path stores. So we allow the passenger to bring food for the entire trip, whereas the donkey driver, we only allow him to put food for that day onto the donkey. Says the Gemara, Avuha, the father of the Rav Acha b'Rei Ika, the father of Rav Acha b'Rei Rav Ika, and in other words, Rav Ika, and we call him the father of Rav Acha because Rav Acha was more choshever than his father. But anyway, this Rav Ika, okay, this Rav Ika, the Gemara is telling us a story. Havu, we go to Amid Beis, Samachei Amid Beis. Havu shafach lechamer legoyim. He would pour wine to goyim. Va'azo ma'avale ma'abara, and then help them ferry across the water. V'yavle gulfei ba'agri, and they would give him the jugs for payment. In other words, like this. Rav Ika was selling kosher Jewish wine, and he would give, and purchasers would come, and he would, let's say purchasers, and these were retailers, because Rav Ika had a wholesale business, and he would sell them barrels of wine. Then they paid for the barrels, but they would allow Rav Ika to keep the barrels. It's funny, they paid for the barrels, but they would allow Rav Ika to keep the barrels if Rav Ika helped them transport what was in the barrel into little wineskins, so they can sell it, those wineskins, they can sell it in smaller increments to retail purchasers. So these wineskins had, remnants of yayin esach in there. So basically, Rav Ika is pouring wine, kosher wine, into a wineskin that has non-kosher wine. So now the kosher wine becomes non-kosher, right? And then Rabbi Ika, in payment of helping doing that, he got to keep the jugs or the barrels that were not his. So basically, the Gemara was questioning, the people were questioning, how was Rav Ika how was he allowed to take payment working with yayin esach? Also, Amr Leila Abaye, so they told Abaye, what's his opinion? Amaleki Katarach Betera Katara. Rav Ika wasn't working with yayin esach, he was working with kosher wine, he was just pouring it into a non-kosher wineskin. So that's not considered working with yayin esach, so he could get paid for that. Says the Gemara, doesn't he want the wineskin to stay intact so that he could have where to pour, so he can get his payment? So he shouldn't have to. The Nistar Zika, he doesn't want the wineskins to rip apart. So it's also a concept of roitze b'kiyuma. He wants the wineskin to stay around so he can pour the wine from his jug or barrel into those wineskins, and therefore he'll be able to keep the barrel. And says the Gemara, they made a condition. They made a condition that even if the wineskins would rip and become non-usable, Rav Ika does not have to eat that cost. They brought a replacement. They bought replacement wineskins. So basically, they bought replacements that were. So it didn't matter if the wineskins got ripped. Another thing is v'kamavle mabara the katarach bisura. But then part of the payment to Rav Ika was he allowed free transport. In other words, maybe the ferry would transport them back to the mainland where the city was. And part of the condition of keeping the barrels was that Rav Ika had to guarantee that they don't have to pay for the ferry fee. So once the wine was in these little wineskins, to transport them back to the mainland was Rav Ika. So we see that Rav Ika was making a profit of transporting yayin esach. And says the Gemara, the Amalei mavuna lemavyona miikara inami dinikite bekitre. Basically, the same idea, which means the ferryman did it for free. Rav Ika told him that when you see these people, make sure you're doing it for free and double charge me for something else. So basically, the transport of those yayin esach was not something that Rabbi Ika made a profit on, and therefore his profit was basically dealing with kosher wine and pouring kosher wine, and because of that, therefore Rabbi Ika was allowed to keep the barrels. New Mishnah. Yayin Nesach, non-kosher wine, Shenafal Agabe Yanam, that fell onto closed grapes, and this was cold wine, so it didn't absorb into the grapes. And wine and grapes are min b'shein minoi. That's two different items. Grapes is one thing, wine is another. Yadichen v'heimu tares. Then all you got to do is wipe the wine off the grapes, send it, put it on the water, and the grapes are permitted. But if the grapes has slits in them, so the wine, the yain nesach, fell into the grapes, and we're not just dealing with yain nesach, even stam yainim. So asurais, then the grapes become asur because the wine went into the grapes. If the wine fell onto figs or dates, now dates and figs have like a porous type of shell. So then, im yesh behem benoisin tam aser, if enough wine fell into the figs or dates, that when you bite into the figs or dates, you can taste a little bit of wine, then the wine becomes aser. Now, the Gemara is going to explain what the next part of the Mishnah, which means that if the wine would give a bad taste to the fruit, then the fruit would be permitted. It's only if it gives a good taste to the fruit. Baitis benzuna brought dried figs. He imported dried figs on a ship. During the transport, a barrel of yayin nesach broke, and it fell on his dry figs. Now it could be a big loss over here because the wine yayin nesach went onto his dried figs. So Baitis ben Zunan went to the Chachama Bitirim. They permitted it because, as we're going to see in the Gemara, that the wine on drop of dried figs gives a bad taste to it. Zaklal, this is the general rule. Kol shabam noser ben tam aser. If the item, the iser item, gives taste and it gives a good taste to the other item, then the whole item that it fell on is aser. Kol she'ein bayan aser ben tam. But if it doesn't give a good taste to the item it fell on, so then the item that it fell on is muta. Now, kagoin, choimitz, you have vinegar, which was at one time yayin esech. It was wine that became vinegar. Shenafal al gabi grisim, that fell onto split beans. So choimitz, vinegar falling onto split beans, gives it a bad taste, and therefore the split beans would be permitted. Says the Gemara Meister Lister, are you telling me a story that contradicts the beginning of the Mishnah? Answers the Gemara Chasur Mechasar v'Hachitani. This is missing words in the Mishnah. Im nasan tam levgam hu mutar. If it gives a bad taste to the item, then to the fruits, then it's permitted. Maybe Baitis ben Zainas brought dried figs, and yayin esech fell on those dried figs. And the chachamim were matir the dried figs because the wine on top of dried figs gives it a bad taste. Another little bit. Eisvei Rabba Balivoy Rava. Rabba Balivoy asked a question on Rava. How was it that they were permitting the Gemara is going to ask a question. How were they? No, the Gemara. Let's tell the story. Kri. There was this there was this pile of wheat. The nafal alei chavis yayin esef. Yayin esef fell on the pile of wheat. So Sharye Rava lizabune legoyim. Rava, since it's a mixture, Rava said you can sell it to goyim. Obviously, Jews can't eat that wheat because there's mixture of yayin nesach on it. But Rava allowed the person who owned the wheat to sell the wheat to goyim. Now the question is, would the goyim who buy the wheat resell it to another Jew? Eisvei Rabba Balivoy, the Rava, we see in a brisa, beged shava by klayim. You have a beged that has little klayim in it. Harezel lo yimkerenu legoy. Don't sell it to a guy because he may resell it to another Jew. V'lo yasem armadas lechamor. You're not allowed to make it a saddle for a donkey because you're sitting on kalayim. You can make it for shrouds for somebody who's dead, because a dead person, if he wears klayim, there's nothing wrong with that. He's not chayiv a mitzvahs. The goy my tama deloy. Why can't you make it to sell it to a guy, a beggar that you know there's klayim in there, because Dilma Asal is a Bunili Yisrael. Maybe he's going to sell it to another Jew. So this raw wheat that Yain Esek fell on him, they question Rava on his psak. Rabba Bar Levoix question Rava on his psak. Hochanami Asal is a Bunili Yisrael. There's a possibility that this guy that buys the wheat is going to resell it back to another Jew. Now, so the Gemara says, Hadar. So then Rava retracted his psak, and he said like this: Shara lemitrichin umafinil zabune legoyim shloi b'fnei Yisrael. You should you're allowed to grind it and bake it and sell it to goyim, and the goyim should buy the bread not in front of Jews, so no Jews see that it's pas Yisrael, and just sell it to a goy. So when a goy has these breads, no Jew is going to buy those breads off the goyim, because it's pas akum, and a Jew doesn't eat pas akum. So therefore, you avoid the problem of the guy reselling it to the Jew. So basically, he requested that the wheat should be turned into bread and then sold to the guy, not in front of other Jews, so nobody knows it's pas Yisrael, and there's no chance that this guy will resell it to another Jew, because no Jew is going to buy the pas akum from the guy. Okay, we'll stop over here. Have a good Shabbos.